on her Facebook.
Yep.
You said yesterday, Jim?
Yeah.
Which are you talking about?
What's that?
Which clothes are you talking about?
One word is about COVID spreading to the community, and other people find out more and older folks in the community.
Okay. We'll call the meeting to order. Jamie, would you take the roll?
Penny Briska. Here. Chris Freeman. John Boothby. Here. Clint Moses. Amy Reynolds Thompson. Here. Charlie Snyder.
Here.
Dave Steyer.
Here.
James Watson.
Here.
Tricia Thompson.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum to conduct business, 7 out of the 9 members here. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. At this time, I'd ask, since Clint is missing tonight, if we could have a motion to appoint Tanya as clerk.
I'll make that motion.
Any? Charlie? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Agenda order and approval revision. Anybody have anything tonight? Okay. Recommendations and commendations. We do have one. The Board of Education of the School District of the Menomonie area recognizes Alicia Wall for her calm and prompt action while going above and beyond to provide health care and aid to a student who is in distress. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alicia, you're certainly welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave whenever you
No student representative communications?
Actually, Dave, Mesa had emailed Jamie and me. There's a conflict that the students have tonight, so they did put a written report in for the board to review.
Any
I do want to point out, I was able to interview Mesa to be a halftime guest at last Friday's football game, and she shared many of the things that typically they share at the board meetings. Unfortunately, there were a lot of technical difficulties with the radio station last Friday, so I'm not sure how much of it got played. But anyway, appreciate her communication.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on that they wanted to add? Okay, community communications, I've received none. None, Jamie? Okay, board member, superintendent communications. Board members. Amy.
I attended the virtual WASB meeting on, I believe it was Thursday. Thank you. I know Charlie was there. I saw him, and I think Tony was there. Jim was with me there. It was a short, sweet 1-hour meeting. Always good content. Some legislative updates. It's pretty much unknown what's going to happen right now. Too many unknowns, as we all know. And then also, since today is It's not really Columbus Day, but it's been renamed, I think, for the community of Menomonie, Indigenous Day. And I'd just like to say Happy Indigenous Day to all of our Native brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to an MHS alumni, David Whitman. He has been nominated for his second Grammy Award for his latest album. He also won several international music awards for the album. And he lives in California, San Diego area, professor, doctor of music, and incredibly successful and rising star in the music world.
Very nice. Thanks, Jim. Anybody else? Tanya, go ahead.
No, mine was just quick, the family feedback for the varsity players to be able to go down to Marshfield was much appreciated and enjoyed immensely by 4 people of every family, so that was really cool that they had that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I saw the game 2 weeks ago on the live feed on TV. It was incredible with the play-by-play. And this last week, you're having a lot of audio difficulties with KD, but the video was still good. I wish Charlie was running the camera because they missed the football once in a while. But still, it was very nice to be able to see it. Anything else from board members? Joe?
Most of it I'll defer to the COVID-19 report. I do want to say after the last board meeting, there was a suggestion to have some Q&A sessions, so we did that. It was, both were very well attended. Sam served as the facilitator with the questions and such, and both went approximately an hour, and it was good. Some really good questions about the status of the district and how the reopening plan is going. So appreciated that board feedback, and we made it happen. So thank you.
I was able to listen in on the night session for the community members and parents and such. I thought it went very well. So. Okay, letter I, revenue and expense reports for the month ended September 2020. Yeah.
Okay, if you want to take a look at the revenue report, I'll review that first. So this is for the month ending September. You know, we're just starting out the school year, so we don't have a lot of revenues coming in yet. But the big one for the month is our state aid payment. That comes in September, and then we have some smaller local revenues received in as well. So the total for Fund 10 was 3.3 million. And then our gift donation fund, you'll see is a negative $785. We had to make an account correction there. We had some donations that went into that donation account, but they were for the sports complex, and so those go into Fund 49 for capital projects. So we moved those donations out, so that's why you see a negative there. And then for special education, we don't have any revenues received in yet for this school year. The next report is the expense by function report. If you'd like to pull that up. There again, our expenses by function for the month are just slightly less than last year at this time. We're at 11.38 compared to 11.79. I anticipate that to catch up. We didn't have the transportation costs in the summer like we normally do. We don't have the summer school payroll like we normally do. So right now expenses are trending a little less, but with all the increase in salaries, then once we get transportation back in, those will start to go up. In Fund 27, we're slightly less too. We're at 7.24 compared to 7.27 from the prior year. And then Fund 50, our food service fund, our expenses are higher. We're at 15.38% compared to 9.04%. But again, our revenues were being reimbursed at a higher rate this year because it's being run through the summer food program that runs through December 31st this year, and that's because of the COVID pandemic. But yeah, expenses are higher in food service, You know, they did run the program all summer. Normally it doesn't run as long. And then, of course, food costs are higher around the country, so it's not a surprise that our food costs are going up too.
Any questions on that?
Okay, and then our expenses by object. These are all funds. We're at 11.13% compared to 11.56%. So just trending a little bit under where we were last year there as well.
I know it's very early in the year, Leah, but any sense on how things are with the enrollments where they're at and the extra staff that's hired?
It's pretty early to predict right now. I think once we get settled in and get all the updates added into the budget, there's a lot of changes this year compared to other years, so we'll have to take a peek at it as we get a few more months into it.
Jim?
Not getting any special ed funding so far, is that typical, or is it delayed because there were delays with the budget and the continuing resolutions that had to get passed?
No, our first special education aid payment is made in November, and then that's that way every year. That hasn't changed.
Okay, monthly employment report. Any questions on that? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Penny, is there a second? Tanya? Any discussion? We have the minutes from our regular board meeting on September 14th, the minutes from our special board meeting on the 28th, financial reports, donations exceeding $1,000, we have one from 3M for $4,500 for district technology supplies, and then our agreement for the extension of banking services is in there as well. If there's no questions, Jamie?
Is it letting you vote, Michelle?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Personnel consent agenda, is there a motion to approve? Charlie, is there a second?
Second.
Amy? Any questions? Any discussion? We just had one, our social worker. Okay, no discussion? Jamie? I'll wait for that to come up. I forgot to mention, thank you, Penny, for running that. Okay, motion carries 7-0. Action item 4A, approve final budget revisions for 2019-2020. Joe or Leah?
Did you have a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve? Jim, is there a second?
I'll second.
Penny, any discussion?
I know we already went through this last meeting, so unless there's any other questions, I think it's ready to go.
No discussion? Okay. Vote. Motion carries 7-0. Action item 4B, approve renewal of our 2021 district health insurance. Is there a motion to approve? Penny, second. Jim, any discussion?
Again, the board reviewed this last meeting. Also, Leah had a meeting with the district health insurance committee. I think people are happy to be staying with the same provider that we've had now for a number of years in the school district.
I was absent last meeting, Joe, but on these rates, so are they going up? Like the administrative fee is dropping. Some of the other things are,
A lot of it's going to, because we're self-funded, a lot of it's going to depend on the claims, and, we always try to predict the claims the best that we can. Leah, is there anything else you want to add?
No, you weren't here, so we're not recommending a premium increase at this time for July 1st. We have a healthy fund balance.
okay.
And so we feel as long as claims stay down, we shouldn't need to increase premiums.
That's what I thought, but then when I was reading this, I was having a little trouble following it, so I was wondering if there was an increase. Any other discussion? Okay, Jamie, let's go. Okay, motion carries 7-0. Discussion items, we'll start with our building and grounds annual report.
So Kevin is here to provide the annual building and grounds report. Kevin, go ahead and take it away, please.
All right. Thank you. So I've shared several pages worth of highlights from throughout the year with you guys, and I don't have time to read down that list in entirety. I'll just get on some of the bigger ticket items from the year. But I'll be happy to answer any questions along the way. Starting out at the high school, one of the projects we did is we did some work to the main student parking lot. If you remember from the 30-year plan update, that was one of the projects slated for that. So what I did is kind of step back from that a little bit, talk to some professionals, trying to get an idea of how much good life we can get out of that project. The direction I decided to go was cut out 2 fairly large pieces of asphalt from the project, repave those areas, and then reseal and paint the parking lot. Our best estimate is we're going to get another 10 years of life out of that parking lot now, so we'll be able to push that project down the line a little bit, which is a good thing considering the expense of our estimate of replacing the lot. Another high school project that we did, our custodial staff kind of took the lead on this one over the summer months. We drained the pool at the high school. That was quite the project. For the most part, the draining and the cleaning went well. About 300,000 gallons of water pumped out of it. And then the custodial crew got in there and scrubbed every square foot of tile. I think they had that part done in 2.5 days. It was pretty impressive. Refilled it, got a chemistry back. That's where we ran into a couple issues. We replaced some valves that seized up on us and rebuilt their lead pump. But since everything's up and running as normal, and overall I'm pretty happy with it, I plan to put that on a 5-6 year rotation for cleaning, or as needed, but I don't think it's been cleaned in quite some time. So it's looking pretty good, getting some good feedback off of that one. LED stadium lighting, fully functional. I think we talked about that, up and running. In the same area though, we started a turf management plan out there. As I'm sure someone noticed, it hasn't exactly been spectacular. I met with our turf product provider at an on-site meeting, and we came up with a plan on how to attack the issues that we're having, so much crabgrass, thin turf, all that kind of stuff. We're about a year into that, and I think it's really turning around. We're actually had to mow it twice a week this summer, which was kind of an oddity for us. So we'll continue to follow that plan, adjust as necessary, and I'm giving it another couple of years, and I think we're going to be really nice, but it's much improved.
Kevin, if I could just jump in on that for a second. One of the big problems with the turf there at the sports complex is that the amount of use it gets, and that's a good thing. But when you look at all the kids that get on there for soccer and lower level football and physics class and other classroom activities, that turf takes a huge toll. So, like even this year, there was some consideration about whether or not varsity football play there on Friday nights. And it really is a difficult situation, especially with the way that it needs to be cut for soccer. And then to expect football to go out there, it's especially with the larger students and the bigger teams for varsity, it is concerning. So I appreciate the work Kevin is doing on that. But I think what you're seeing a field that is very well used, but I think there's limitations to what it can be used for based on the amount of traffic that's on it.
Yes, this summer was certainly a good break for it to catch up. Moving on over to the middle school, our secured entrance project is still in the works. The pandemic that we're in has dealt us some unusual blows. Sourcing glass was one of them. So we're still waiting on some of the exterior glass for that project, due to come in the month of October, so a couple more weeks yet. Once that glass is in, we'll wrap that project up. Couple more items at the middle school, our storage building. About a year and a half ago, I stood in the building and it was empty as staff were sweeping the floor. Today it is full. Our major maintenance staff are currently going through it, removing any damage beyond repair items, getting rid of those things, and then we're going to go and organize, determine what can be used in the district now, what we should save for the district, or possibly what we can put on an online auction to offer to the public. So I'll be working on that over the winter months, probably the next couple of months. One last topic at the middle school, we had a little bit of a fluke accident. I think it was about 2 years ago, we had fiber installed in the schools, between 1 and 2 years ago. Somehow when they boarded the fiber line in, they clipped one of our sewer lines. So that problem surfaced this spring when the asphalt started caving a little bit. Once we figured out what we're up against, so it was, I think, a day repair. We had officers come in and take care of the problem, fully functional again. Oak Lawn. Oak Lawn's been kind of notorious for some water heating problems, primarily at the hand wash stations when the kids come out of the restrooms. One of our major maintenance staff spent a lot of time over the summer months troubleshooting and just studying the system, trying to figure out what's going wrong. It's not that old, we shouldn't be having those problems. So in the course of his troubleshooting, we found some failed components, some improperly sized components, and one pump installed backwards. Over the course of the years, we, excuse me, we don't know how the above happened, but that's all been taken care of, and we're seeing a good improvement there. But he did a really great job troubleshooting that system. We would have had to hire somebody to come in and go through, component by component, trying to see. It would have been a fairly large expense for us. Moving on to Wakanda, we did a bathroom remodel. This is for our 4K students to give them easier access into the facilities, easier for them and easier for the teachers to monitor the to and from. Added a door into the small remodel with out at NAP, a 30-year plan project, LED lighting. This has been another tough one. We started this early July, getting the ball rolling on this project, and just today I got a call saying make room for the light fixtures, they're finally going to come. So if that finally happens, I'll be working with the building principal and our electrical contractor to find times where we can go in and start installing these fixtures when the kids aren't around. River Heights, we had some repairs to the boilers this year. 2 light boilers failed in the same manner. One was able to be rebuilt and one we're replacing. So as of today, we have 1 functioning boiler with replacement combustion chamber boiler coming in a matter of days. So just in time for the winter season. Environmental site. Work continues. We're not done with the cabins yet. I think we are calling 4.5 out of the 6 original complete. Again, all the COVID work that was added to our workload this summer prevented us from spending a whole lot of time out there this summer. In addition to working on the cabins, though, we did do some trail clearing, removing down trees type stuff. And the general department topics now. Made some adjustments to our HVAC in light of COVID. I had our HVAC service providers write a program into our controls where I can access, whether it's at work, from home, or from home, the amount of fresh air that goes into our classrooms. Some areas were not able to be adjusted, such as the high school was already running at 100% outside air. Other areas, we have the capability to go up to 100%. I stuck in a default of 50%, knowing that our systems will struggle, I think, in times of extreme weather if we run that much air into our system. So for example, this January, if it's 30 below on a Sunday morning, I can grab my phone, look at what our boilers are doing. If they're running at full load and the building's cool, I can make that adjustment. Obviously, I'll be in touch with Dr. Zadelski before I change any of those parameters because it is important with the virus now.
Can I ask a quick question about
Yeah.
that? So is it in regards to boiler, and I am not an electrician, so older boiler systems are gonna have a struggle with it colder? Like how many buildings is there like a concern with their winter cold to make them run for the students? That question makes sense.
Except for the last part, could you
Sure.
repeat?
No, so which school, do we have a concern about a certain
No.
school being, okay,
No.
okay,
Most of our boilers are actually newer.
okay.
It's just I'm not familiar enough with making that change and how they'll react.
Okay,
So it'll be easy to monitor.
okay, super.
And one final consideration we made in light of some of the changes this year is we've done a lot of key and lock work throughout the district. We have a number of new teachers working in new spaces and a number of existing teachers that are working at multiple classrooms instead of, say, 1 or 2 classrooms. So that's been an ongoing change that we made. Buildings and grounds equipment. I was pretty fortunate to be able to stock up on a few items at the end of last year. Purchased some things such as cutting edges for snow plows, fertilizer, grass seed, things like that that we use often. So now we have a little extra supply of those items. No changes to our fleet this year, no new vehicles or equipment. We made a tracking sheet. I think we're tracking 15 vehicles and 8 pieces of equipment. So every January I'll be going in tracking condition, mileage, things like that. And by doing so in January, it gives me a little time to prepare for next year's budget. As far as our staffing goes, we had one retirement this year. One of our long-term custodians retired after 4 years or so. We promoted 2 of our regular full-time custodians to head custodians, one at Oak Lawn, one at the high school. We hired the 7 additional custodial staff for the sole purpose of sanitizing our schools. We're currently recruiting for the district energy manager position, and we have a couple of other custodial positions open at this time as well. As far as staff go, I just wanted to take 10 seconds and say, just recognize what a great job they're doing. It's been kind of a struggle of a year. We've had a lot of work thrown at us this year that is above and beyond, I guess, our normal duties. And I really get nothing but compliments when I go to the schools, and it's really great to hear. I think they're all, they accept the challenge and find a way to get everything done. So great job to them. So what's next? We have a couple of those 30-year plan projects to finish out. So we'll be doing that in the coming months. I think in January we'll meet and I'll go into more detail on those projects, whether it's the status of the current ones or our plans for the next year projects. Any questions?
I have a question, Kevin. Did you have much trouble for the 7 new hires for custodial, for cleaning? You had much trouble filling those positions?
Those positions filled pretty quickly. There are 2 of them will be open in the near future. One person is moving on, but another one we're actually bringing on full-time already.
Oh. Side benefit.
Yeah. It's a good foot in the door.
Any questions for Kevin? Well, thank you. Thank your crew and everybody for all the good, great work that they've done this year. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, we'll move on to discussion item B, COVID-19 report.
And Kevin, you're welcome to stay, but I also know you have a commute, so whenever you go, whenever it works for you. Okay, so the COVID-19 report, the pandemic is still here. I think we all know that. There's now 787 cases in Dunn County. 673 cases have been released from quarantine, so there's 114 active cases. Looking at the numbers, it appears that the burden may be starting to go down a little bit. Hopefully that's the case. I will continue to track it very closely. Looking at the graphs, and Jim, you had mentioned some information you saw. If you could pass that on, I'd be interested to see that. But you know, we continue to track the cases week by week, and what we're seeing in the state data is that for Dunn County, most of the cases still are in that young adult age group. We have had 20 cases in students that attend our schools, and 4 staff cases for people who attend our schools. There's currently 7 active student cases and 1 active staff case. So 13 students and 3 staff have been released from isolation. I'm very happy to say that when we look at the close contacts, and you all know we had a large number of close contacts during the first few weeks, we haven't seen any evidence of spread with those close contacts. Pretty much all the new cases that have come in have been family exposure or exposure outside of the school district, which is still very concerning. But when we look at it from a mitigation measure piece, what we're doing with the hand sanitation, the extra airflow, the distancing, the use of masks, we're very pleased with the data and what we're seeing in our classrooms. But it remains as important as ever to wash up, back up, and mask up. That's the model from the Dunn County recovery team. You're also aware that Dunn County reduced the gathering guidelines down to 10 people indoors and 25 outdoors. Governor Evers followed up and issued an order on October 6th, limiting gatherings across the state until November 6th. Schools are exempt from the recommendation and order, but we will follow that as much as practicable based on our operations. You're all aware of the face mask order. We continue to follow that closely. It's supposed to expire November 21st. If it does expire, we continue to plan on having our mask policy the same unless there's additional action taken by the board following November 21st. I've already gone through the thresholds that the Dunn County Health Department updated, so I don't know that there's any need to go through that again tonight. But what I can tell you is that the number of absences, the number of exclusions has come way down. We're very, very pleased with that, and I'll get to that in a second. We have developed a data dashboard for internal use. We're paying very close attention to our data. We understand that it's critically important that, as we track that data, we continue to modify plans and mitigation to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our students and staff safe. So we'll continue to do that, and then I'm sending out the weekly updates. We want to make sure everyone is informed about the current situation in our school district. The last one, October 7th, I linked into the report. I think you've already seen that. In discussing the student staff attendance, today we had only 3.29% of our students that were excluded. That's significantly down from September 24th, where it was above 10%. So we're very pleased with how our changes were able to have a positive impact on the number of student exclusions. And then staff members is under 2%. Staffing, we continue to be concerned with the large workload for all of our teachers. This year definitely is a different year with the number of students being home. And that's another one of the reasons why we're so pleased to see those exclusion numbers come down. Because it is a lot of work for teachers to do a great job in the classroom and provide that support at home. I don't know how teachers in other districts where they're also having to coordinate the virtual learning. I'm really glad our staff members do not have to do that. I'm glad we contracted out for the virtual school piece. Principals have been reviewing the online classrooms developed by teachers because, as we heard at the last board meeting, with the students that are excluded, we want to make sure we're supporting those students. And Brian reviewed many of those, the principals have reviewed them, and our teachers are doing a very good job. We do have a professional development day on Thursday, and I know that's one of the topics that many of our teachers will be working on also, to develop more skills in terms of providing great online resources for our kids. We have placed a hold on the work associated with the educator effectiveness program for evaluating professional staff. We've talked to our teachers. That was one of the things with the Q&A session that we hosted, is that we're trying to look for things that we can take off our teachers' plates. They have so many other things to do in providing student support. So right now we've kind of paused everything to do with the educator effectiveness program. In fact, that may be an area where we would want to look at a state waiver. I know some other school districts are doing that, and we're still kind of studying that right now. The advice we're getting from CISA 11 is that, with these waivers, don't jump the gun on them. Let's really evaluate, first of all, whether or not, it'd be acceptable to pause that. And then secondly, are there flexibilities already built into the law that would not make a waiver necessary? So if and when we feel a waiver is important, we'll bring that forward to the board. I got notice today that the free meals for kids program, Mrs. Colzer shared that it now has been extended through the entire school year. We're very, very thankful for that. So we'll continue to provide free meals for all children attending school in person and through the virtual program. And Mrs. Colzer and her staff are doing a great job with that. Technology, we continue to get Chromebooks out to, now we're in the elementary grade levels. So we appreciate the work that the principals and the tech department have done with that. Virtual school, I shared those numbers last time. Nothing has really changed much with that. We still have a few students that come in and out, but we have it pretty well set. It's too late to add new students to the virtual school program. Especially with WVS, if we were to put a student in right now, this many weeks into the school year, it really would be difficult for a student to have success. So we do have a timeline set up for second semester, beginning on September 30th. Oh, I'm sorry. Beginning on December 1st, there will be a new enrollment window, and that enrollment will go through December 16th. So we'll be sharing that out with families as we get a little bit later into the fall. Student activities, a number of student sports and activities are underway. The middle school completed a successful fall season. It was very well done. I had the opportunity to see some of that up close and personal, and just so impressed with our coaches and how they dealt with the mitigation measures and how the students complied and the parents and families. So we really appreciate that. I think it was a great experience for a lot of kids. In terms of other things, last week, the WIA released guidance for winter activities, and it's just so different this year. Every season is going to be a whole other evaluation of what the guidelines are and how things can be done safely. One of the biggest challenges for the winter is I think you're moving a lot of those activities inside, so the risk is increased, and all those mitigation measures become even more important. I've had a chance to look at it just briefly, and it appears to me that it's really more based on cohorting than it is on some of the other mitigations like the fall. So we'll be reviewing that. Mr. Mayor will be talking to the coaches, and we'll bring the board a recommendation soon. So that's it for my report. Are there any questions on anything? Amy?
My question is, where it says that 13 student cases in your first thing about what do we know on COVID, it says that there 13 cases and 3 staff cases have recovered and been released from isolation. Does that mean that they're back in school or working?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, it may be too early to ask, but would there be any consideration or need to change spring break at all? Is the calendar the way it is, or would there be any potential that it would be, say, take back?
I know there were some discussions about that at the college levels. I think some colleges have gone away with spring break. At this point, there hasn't been any discussion in the school district. Certainly if that was something the board felt would be appropriate, we could look at it. At this point, I guess I don't have any reason why I would that.
Nothing came up, the Big Rivers discussion either with other superintendents?
No, and we've been talking quite often, not only the Big Rivers, but also the Dunn County superintendents, and it's interesting, we're all dealing with similar things, and I know some of our school districts are grappling right now with the exclusion piece, and that certainly is not an easy task. And again, I think we were pretty fortunate in Menomonie to be able to work with our teachers and our custodians and everyone and get us to the point where we could reduce those exclusions without having to reduce our enrollment. Most of the schools I've talked to, in order to get away from those exclusions, they're having to reduce enrollment. And then you're looking at students missing about 50% of their schooling in person.
Tricia?
So December 16th would be when the enrollment window would close potentially for second semester, correct?
For the virtual school application, yes.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that's going to give us enough time if, let's say, there's a bunch of kids that decide to come back into the district and are like, oh, where are we going to put these kids? In terms of like the school board approving anything or, I'm just wondering about the timing if that'll be enough.
Yeah, that gives us about a month. The holiday break is in there, so that shortens it a little bit. We have talked to the building principals, and it's tough because if we go too early, then we're forcing people to make decisions, because again, we're all, hopeful about vaccines and therapies and everything like that. So we want to get as close as we can while still providing enough time. Because you're right, Tricia, it very well could be that we have a number of students come back. But we are scheduling kind of quarter by quarter. I know Mr. Drake and Mrs. Mopson have already been working on second quarter, and we think we can make it work with the spacing for second quarter. This would give us about a month. In the event that we get everyone back, it is possible that something like the blended option could be one of those tools that we have to use if we can't fit all the students in and keep them 6 feet apart, depending on what the circumstances are at the time. But we're nervous about going too early though, Tricia, because we found that with the fall piece, even leading up to the school year, and it was much closer than a month. There still were a lot of people that had their minds changed, and that really was difficult. This is mid-year, so we shouldn't see as much fluctuation, but I'm sure there still will be some.
Jim?
Has the order limiting group size by the health department affected attendance at different events and things? Has there been restrictions placed on that, or that's still?
No, because our attendance has been so low anyway, that it really hasn't been an issue for us.
Does the school exclusion cover that or not?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't think that the gathering requirements would impact. I know in the governor's order it calls it out specifically that schools are not impacted by it.
The county might be different.
Right. I can tell you there's a lot more than 50 people at Marshfield last Friday. Probably 400, 500. People did a pretty good job though, and we did a calculation on Williams Stadium, and we felt we could get 450 people in there and keep everyone distanced, but I understand where we're at.
Any other, Charlie?
With the virtual learning, were there any students that requested to go to virtual but missed the deadline or there wasn't space for them, so they didn't get in?
Yeah, we had a wait list, and we were able to get a few students in. It was very difficult with the summer rush that WVS had, but Katie did a really good job. We have had a couple more students come in the last 2 weeks with some very special needs. And I know that Tonya in our special services department, and then also Katie in the tech department, the principals have been looking at things other than WVS that we can use. We do have an Edgenuity program, but the options are much more limited now, mid-semester or mid-quarter, than they would have been at the beginning of the year.
Jim?
How have the full-time subs been working out? Have they been able to cover everything? We're still, trying to still teachers to cover classes and stuff. Kind of how's the subject situation looking?
A lot of it depends on how many exclusions we have. It got pretty tough there. I know Sam would say they've been a godsend, but even with all those full-time subs, we were stretched pretty thin some days. So we continue to monitor that. We've talked about whether or not we need to post for another sub or two. At this point, have you posted one, Sam, or not?
I haven't. We have 2 of our long-term subs that we've hired are doing like paternity and maternity leaves, and those will be coming up mid-November. And so and then they will be going into into the buildings to be subs. And so I also don't want to overhire. I'm trying to find that fine line between getting us enough support, but having too many people hired in that sense. Does that make sense?
But subbing is a challenge all over the country really, but that's one of the topics we talk about at the superintendent meetings is subbing is very challenging. And actually a number of schools have done what we've done now in terms of hiring full-time subs, and we'll continue to monitor it. If it seems like we're not able to cover things reasonably, then I think we're gonna have to look at hiring another 1 or 2 full-time.
Amy?
This just reminded me at that last week, Region 4 meeting, I think Dan Rothenauer told us that in the eastern part of the state where it's really up in like the area, they're offering like $200 a day for subs because they just can't find them.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my,
We need to do that, but I'm just saying that
Right.
that's just such a shortage, that's what they're going to do.
one of my colleagues told me that in their school district, they made a large increase and they have not seen it increase their pool. I really think our approach to hiring a full-time, which is super expensive, but I just don't know that there's much of a choice at this time, so.
Did you say they increased their rate 200 or went to 200?
I'm not up to $200 a day.
Increased it 200? It's surprising, you know, I know we're over 200 for long-term subs, but,
I think Amy said they increased it to 200.
Yeah, it's $200 a day.
oh, okay.
That's what I understood. Anyway.
Okay.
I think you're right.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zadowski. Okay, we'll move on to item 5C, Act 31 report.
So a while back, the board had asked some information about Act 31, and I appreciate the work that Brian and our staff did in putting the report together. It is in board docs there, and I guess I appreciate Brian attending tonight. I don't know if you want to start, do board members have any questions about it, or do you just like to have Brian step through it a little bit first?
You might as well go. Oh, Charlie.
Just a quick question. You know, the real question that we started with is, do you feel that we are meeting the requirements of Act 31?
So thank you, Charlie, for the question. And the short answer is not only do we meet it, we exceed the minimum requirement of Act 31. There is always the opportunity to do more and improve, but our staff, like a lot of things, I think have found a good balance. Act 31 requires in public school districts for instruction on the items that are included, which is to have instruction on the history, culture, and tribal sovereignty of Wisconsin's 11 federally recognized American Indian nations and tribal communities. They require that to happen twice in the elementary grades, once in the middle grades, and at least once in the high school. And thanks to the work of our staff, you can see that pretty much every single grade level, we have some type of activity centered around that expectation. And what I'm happy about over the years is we've not only been able to build it into our curriculum, but we've also been able to provide professional development both in district around the requirements of Act 31 and instructional resources associated with Act 31, but then also to have representative groups of our staff go out of the district to attend professional development for that as well.
Thank you.
Anything else for Brian?
Amy.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for this report. It's a long time coming, so I appreciate the work you did to get this together. And I find it interesting that it's that we're kind of looking at this Indigenous Day. So I think that's pretty cool. And I'm just wondering if you knew of any special activities that went on today as a result of Indigenous Day in our schools.
Yeah, so I can't point to a specific activity that happened building-wide. I know that many of our staff had activities that they did in their classroom. Last week, we did share a series of resources that the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction puts together, as well as the Wisconsin First Nations group puts together as well, that has several different resources and activities, so that intentionally went out ahead of the week so that staff would have some updated resources at their fingertips.
And I can tell you, I know of 2 sixth graders that had a discussion about it in class today.
Great, thank you. Any relation?
Yes.
Any other questions? Jim?
Not a question, but just a comment. It's good to see that we're also addressing things going on today. You know, too often we talk about Native Americans and all the past and it was treaties, and it's not like there's actually around anymore. And we very much are, so that was good. A good mix of current and history.
Okay, thank you, Brian, appreciate it. Item 5B, review early college credit request for spring of $20,214.
Huh. I said there's a typo there.
We're really looking ahead.
This item comes up to the board every time this year, and Brian put it all together and shared all the information. What are we looking at for this year, Brian, the numbers?
Yep, so for this coming spring, we do have a total of 219 requests, which is quite a bit higher than last year, made by 26 students, which is a little bit higher than the fall. But of note, 100 of those 219 requests have been made by 3 separate students, and the rest of those are made from the balance of the students. It's not uncommon for us to have a student request multiple courses well beyond the 2 that they're able to take, so that they essentially have courses ready to go if the courses that they were interested in happen to be full at the post-secondary level. And the high school guidance team and administration reviews that list to make sure that there are appropriate courses for the students to be taking as far as part of their academic and career plan, and then also to make sure that there's not a similar course currently being offered in the high school as well. So a student can take up to 2, so we won't have 219 courses being taken. At most, we would have, I think if I do my math correctly, we would have 52. But the reality is we probably won't have that many because some students only requested 1 course.
Any questions? Tanya?
I think it's wonderful that the number keeps upticking, so I'm a big proponent for this program. The other thing too, with the amount of requests, because are they not the last kiddos that get to pick a class? So with Scout changing classes or dropping classes, so that's probably a cushion as to why they have chosen so many. Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on. Item 5E, review updated actuarial study of district post-employment trust.
So the board, not only do we share the summary page with you, but we shared the very long reports. And I apologize that board docs did not allow for that size, so I sent them to you separately as well. But really, what it comes down to is that our liability is down, our assets are up, and like we said last year, we're to the point where we feel that this program is set that it really should fund itself as teachers retire and new teachers come on board. We should be in a situation where it can fund itself. So it was great work by the board. It was difficult work, but I think it put our district in a position where we're much better off, and we don't have this huge unfunded liability like we did several years ago. Any questions?
I remember when I was on the board, we were in the over 20 to 25, maybe a little higher million of open liabilities. Does this mean that down the road that we won't be putting anything into Fund 73, or is there still reason to contribute into that fund?
No, we still will have expenses into Fund 73, but it won't take as much of the budget as it would if we hadn't saved.
But I guess what I meant is in years past, sometimes if we had money left over at the end of the year, we'd go to Fund 46 or Fund 73 sometimes. With this getting to the point where it's getting close to being self-funded.
Well, it's not fully funded. Much of the future funding will come from retirees retiring and then new teachers coming on board. So it's still a good investment for the board to consider. Because Fund 73 is an aidable expense, we don't necessarily want to get into a situation where we're overfunded though. So I think Fund 46 would be our primary vehicle for that, but I still think Fund 73 is something to consider. Leah, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, you're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Review 2020-2021 budget time.
I appreciate Leah putting this together. This is the same timeline that we've used for several years now. You can see it's a very lengthy process. It's going to kind of culminate at our next meeting where the board actually sets the levy and approves the finances for the school year. And then starting right away in November, we'll be working on the next year's budget plan. So this is just kind of an update of what you can see, all the work that has gone into preparing the budget. And then, like I said, next meeting, you'll have the budget and the tax levy in front of you, and then we'll get going on the next cycle. Any questions at all about the timeline?
Okay, item 5G, review items related to next meeting date, board committees and reports. We have one more meeting in October 26th at 5:30. Anything else, Joe, you want to add?
Just a reminder for everyone that we do have that professional development day on Thursday of this week, and then Friday there's no school. That's a parent-teacher conference reimbursement day for our staff. So 3 days of school this week for the students, one professional development day, and then Friday off.
Okay, we do have a closed session, so we're going to take a 5-minute break and then we'll go into close. Thank you, everybody, for attending.